Ryan Hunter, Identity and Fraud Strategy Lead at Bilt Rewards, a leading expert in next-generation digital identity and fraud prevention. Prior to joining Bilt, Ryan built a solid career at companies such as Deserve, where he was a key player in developing advanced identity verification, authentication, and digital risk mitigation tools. His work stands out for its combination of technology, user experience, and a keen eye for new forms of fraud emerging in highly dynamic digital environments. Recognized for his ability to articulate strategy with technical depth, Ryan is a respected voice in discussions about the future of identity, emerging regulations, and the balance between innovation, security, and privacy in digital financial environments.
So tell me your story. Where are you saying hello from? Let's start there. Can I geolocate you in the planet I live in?
Yeah, so I'm currently located in New York City. I work at Bilt Rewards, and so our office is in Manhattan. I live in Brooklyn, and I've just recently moved to New York in the past year. So I moved in February. So almost 1 year here in New York City. So before that, I was sort of traveling around. I was working remotely, so I was sort of in different locations, but I was living in Hawaii for a bit and Mexico and Guatemala and Colorado and a bunch of other places. So I was sort of full-time remote for the previous 4 years before that. So it was this is my first time with a lease in a few years, and we'll continue to stay in New York City for a while. As my job is full-time in office. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm in a phone booth in my office.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, before I get to Bilt Rewards, the office, and besides the cool phone booth, like what you're
Mhm.
actually doing for
Yeah.
society in general, tell me a bit more about Ryan. Where was Ryan born, and how did Ryan get into, fraud, identity, and
Yeah.
being a coach in the first place?
Yeah. So let's see, I was born and raised in California in the San Francisco Bay Area. I grew up in a town called Alameda. And I was, my dad was also from Alameda. And so we went to the same high school, so it's sort of like a lineage there. And then I left Alameda. I went to college in San Diego, went to San Diego State, where I studied finance. And then shortly thereafter, after graduating from college, I did a pretty long trip. So I went to South America for a little over 1 year right after graduation. Literally like the day of graduation, I left pretty much. And I went to, kind of all over from starting in Mexico all the way down to Patagonia and back up towards Brazil. And so I did that for like 14 months. And right after that, I came back home to the San Francisco Bay Area and I realized I had zero money. I didn't have two pennies to rub together. So I was like, I'm going to take the first job I could find and then I'm going to reevaluate what happened. So, because I was living at home, I was like 23, 24, whatever I was. And I got a job working basically like customer service, more or less, at a company called Upstart. And Upstart was a fairly new company. There was, roughly 150, 200 employees when I joined. I had no idea what peer-to-peer lending was. I had no idea, what I was going to be doing. And so I started working at Upstart in 2016 and doing customer service. And again, my plan was 3 months, let's get out, get some cash and leave. And I ended up really enjoying the job, really enjoying the company and sort of learning about, uh, how lending, how it all works, what all the intricacies of everything was. And I ended up moving from customer experience, customer service towards like loan review within a few months of being there. And that's when I really started enjoying the role a lot more. So got to approve and review loan documents, approving identity, approving all the KYC, looking at all the income and validating the income. And from there, I moved. I did that for about. I ended up staying for over a year at Upstart, and I towards the latter half of my tenure there, I ended up joining the fraud team, and I was one of the early members there. And I had sort of a knack for finding fake driver's licenses, and so that was sort of we were trying to figure out how to do everything. This is pre like ID and selfie. This is just like they upload a photo of a driver's license kind of situation. And from there, worked on the fraud team for 6-ish months, and then I ended up getting recruited to join a company called Deserve, where I was sort of leading fraud strategy over there, and eventually fraud teams and fraud strategy. So I was at Deserve, which does credit cards as a service, and mostly credit cards are a different beast from peer to peer and loans. So it was kind of a interesting transition, and sort of it was a really small company I joined. We had 35-ish employees, and so we were sort of building the plane while we were flying it. But we grew that company to over 200 employees, and eventually I left for Bilt Rewards, where I'm in charge of identity and fraud strategy here, and sort of handling uh, fraud and identity as it relates to our credit card product, different methods to pay rent, rewards, gaming, all sorts of stuff. It's a much different. It's sort of same but different. It's a lot of the stuff that I'm familiar with, and a lot of uh, new greenfield opportunities, we'll say, to learn a lot about rewards abuse and gaming and things like that. So it's been a fun ride so far, and I've been here almost a year. Um, yeah, and I guess one thing I'll add is, I guess the way I sort of fell into the Fraud Fight Club was, I was asked to do a in-person event with a vendor, and that was hosted in conjunction with the Fraud Fight Club, and that's how I met PJ. And then from there, I did a couple webinars with them, one or two webinars, and another in-person event. So I've done a few events with them, but that's how I sort of came to be in the fraud space. I fell into it. I studied finance. I had no intention of staying in, or doing fraud prevention. It just sort of happened. I was planning on just making enough money until I could find out what I really wanted to do, and I'm very happy and blessed that I was able to find this industry and this type of role. So I couldn't have asked for a better career.
That's super cool. I think a lot of us have like unintentionally kind of like fell backwards into this like crazy
Yeah,
industry that it is identity and fraud, right? So
yeah,
understanding this intuition that you had of like seeing whether it was driver licenses or passports in a time that KYC was still sort of doing that. A lot of companies are
yeah,
still doing that today. But
for
there are
sure.
a lot of technological advancements that have happened in the industry. What are some of the ones that have been super exciting that you have had the chance to watch?
Yeah, so I started in fraud, I guess that was close to 10 years ago. And back in the day, we didn't really have, I'm not sure if they were super nascent or they didn't exist at that time, but fraud orchestration providers. And so the ability to sort of plug and play new vendors and seamlessly. And so that's the story as old as time, which is all the fraud teams are under resourced, and we don't have the ability, the tech teams don't have the bandwidth to, you know, to try out new vendors and to sort of put them in, and you have to be very confident in your choice because it's a big build, and they have to do all the integration work, or they have to do all the testing and getting everything set up, and then you have to tune and do all the workflows yourself. And so back when that was happening, it was just sort of it was very difficult to make changes. It was difficult to get things the way you want them to be. And after using orchestration layers, it's sort of like, oh, you just plug a new guy in. Oh, you got a new thing you want to try out, just put it in, see what happens. There's virtually zero tech work, and it's just sometimes a new pricing structure you have to agree to. And I really like that because you're able to sort of test drive vendors in real life, as opposed to, you do some sort of back test, and somehow the back test always seems to be like they're the best fraud vendor that ever walked the face of the earth. Um, and then there's nothing like a live trial, I think. And so I like being able to sort of trial stuff and with the orchestration layers and build super, more complex workflows with those vendors and different waterfall workflows. So that's a really exciting one. I think that's been happening for the last 5 years or so. And I would say also, in my time, the other thing that was cool or new-ish was when we were doing driver's license and selfie sort of live authentication stuff. And so, like I said, back in the day, we were just looking at static images. And as we know, those images are sort of all out there. And who knows how many fraudulent applications were approved just by looking at those images of driver's licenses. And while I have a lot to say about the ID and selfie vendors, I think they're far from perfect. I think that they provide at least a little more confidence that we have the right person in front of us, and allows us to sort of scale up our teams and be able to do stuff in more automated fashion. So you don't have to wait for someone to start work to look at the queue. You can kind of do more automated and automatic approval. So those are sort of two technologies that I like, that I've seen sort of change in my time since working in fraud. And I think going forward, I think there'll be sort of a push for more simplification. I think right now it it's
What does that mean
the
for you?
yeah, so like the orchestra.
Like you talked orchestration, the
Yeah,
ability to like plug and play, A/B testing,
yeah,
live, real clients, which we should all learn a thing or two. Like Apple tells us when our software is going to change, right?
yeah,
And that's gajillions of consumers all across the world overnight.
yeah, for sure. I think
And you don't see lines across, branches with people screaming. So what have we taught people when we talk about advancement? So what does that mean? Simplification. Simplification on like do it yourself, low code,
yeah.
like what are we talking? Because you said it yourself. Today we're
Mhm.
not only talking about static photos or videos, we're talking about video injection, we're talking about AI, we're talking about simulation that you don't really know if it's me or not.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, when I say simplification, I mostly am talking about workflows, in the sense that, and vendor selection. So it's really hard to know, and it is a full-time job to keep on top of your vendors and new vendors, new entrants, new data to purchase, all these different things. There's a new kid on the block every other week, and so it's hard to know who the best is. And I think there's going to be kind of a and while you can sort of do all this testing, that is a full-time job. And I think that there's going to be more of a movement in the kind of small to mid market type of fintechs, where it's sort of going to be an out of the box solution. You have a company that sort of has their own stack that they maintain, and they just give you the highest, most accurate pass rates and fraud detection with a vendor selection that they have researched and are constantly iterating on. And I think that will be more of a shift. And again, that will never be for the big guys or people who have really complex and advanced workflows. But I think for these Series A, B startups, especially, they're going to be more of a movement towards that. Um, Even like in these orchestration layers, there's so much complexity that's built in, and these people are supposed to, they're a team of 15 and they have to hire a full-time fraud person to do this, to do the onboarding. Doesn't really make sense. So I think there's going to be more of a movement towards simplification in the next few years. That's what I think. And I think you already see this with a lot of companies that are swallowing up smaller startups, and growing their product suite, the Sokirs of the world and things like that.
And I think that's the purpose of technology, isn't it? Like simplifying our lives. And if we look at the story instead of the villain, and like I think in fraud, we're often taught that like criminals don't do POCs, criminals don't go by the rules. Like, so if they're using the latest and greatest out there, like how do we make a large or small corporation be able to take advantage of this to fight the fight in kind of like fair terms? I think that's one of the most noble things that I think are challenging when we look at fintechs having a cost of acquisition per customer, having a very tough market to begin with.
Yeah.
What have you seen? You're building a company here and helping it come and being the fraud person, you're often seen as a no guy. And I think that that's like one of the misconceptions of the heroes behind fraud. And I think when we look at this, is often a conversation around the balancing act, which I called we should leave it for the circus, between customer experience and really fraud prevention. I think in 2025, like there's not a lot of room for customers expecting your experience to be crappy. But
Hmm.
there's a lot of places where fraud can happen.
Yeah.
And as the periphery grows and like the boundaries of digital experiences, APIs, or connectivity blur, you want to service your client wherever. And that means being able to trade data, abstract data, exchange, and take advantage of what it insights that it has you with protecting your customer and sort of the sovereignty of your systems. This is not an easy task. How do you navigate through this in today's world and in your role?
Yeah, I think you sort of hit the nail on the head where customers demand that they're going to have a seamless experience, especially during onboarding. Um, and I think it comes down to the risk tolerance of the business. I think that businesses oftentimes have uh, they sort of are trying to optimize the wrong thing. And so frequently what I see is that especially in smaller companies, they're trying to they're trying to optimize for fraud losses, which is important, right? To get those as close to zero as possible. And while that's a noble goal, it's impossible to get those to zero. And once you get down to a certain level, you're really cutting into dramatically the amount of friction you're giving good people. And so for me, I always say that we should be thinking about our fraud losses. They should be expected. They should be, within our tolerance, and they shouldn't be surprising, right? We should have a goal in mind, and that should not be zero. That goal should be above zero. Our goal should really be about keeping that fraud losses within a tolerance that the business is okay with, and then also maximizing or trying to get the amount of friction that we're giving customers as close to zero as possible. So that's really I'm talking about both things. So really optimizing for the amount of friction. Um, and like I said, customers demand that they have a seamless onboarding experience. So using as much technology as humanly possible to pass people through. So just running you should not be optimizing on cost 100% on the vendor cost. You should be doing more waterfall approaches. And if this vendor is failing, can we find them with another vendor? Is there a one better suited to this demographic? From a KYC perspective, or is there some signal that we can find that even if certain vendors are telling us that this might be medium or high risk, that this actually means that they're low risk. So really trying to layer in your fraud vendors to only have friction for a small number of applicants, and again, not trying to maximize or sort of trying to optimize on fraud losses, but trying to keep that at a level that's anticipated, and then lowering the amount of friction that we have for good people. So that's sort of what my perspective is, and I think that a lot of businesses, especially new entrants, and uh, kind of get that wrong. And I think they really want they want their fraud losses to be zero, and I think that's while a noble goal, I don't think it's possible.
I think I like the approach around reality.
Yeah.
If you look at the large size players in the space, and if you're an entrant in the space, how can you expect not to have, perhaps not the periphery, but I think the noble cause is a lot of the things that also get you up in the morning and made you become a coach here
Mhm.
at Fraud Fight Club. So when people look and listen to your story and listen to your approach to risk, which actually reminds me of conversations with CISOs and treasurers talking about even risk of money collateral being burned each and every day in our banking system. So why shouldn't we expect it if we are building any other digital based service today? But your aspiring go with fraud professionals in the community here as a coach goes beyond the reality check you just gave us all. Why did you become a coach? How did it happen? And what can you leave people out there that listen to your story and say, okay, I want to take that kind of risk. This seems like a cool job.
Yeah. So I think that this is such a niche type of profession. There's no real degree in fraud prevention, right? And so all of this is learned on the job. And I think that uh, one of the cool things about this career path, this industry, is it's very collaborative. And so I really like how everyone is sort of willing to share, at least to some extent, what's working and what's not, what their real opinions are on certain vendors, what their real opinions are on different fraud rings. And it's great that I'm able to, talk to people in the industry and sort of uh, pick their brain around, hey, I'm seeing this weird thing. Are you guys seeing this as well? And I think that me joining the Fraud Fight Club was trying to get even to sort of and get a larger community. And I think for people who are thinking about joining, or thinking about having a career in fraud prevention or identity or fraud, it's a great it's a great profession for the future. I think that there's going to be a lot more roles available for people as this goes on. You always need someone to sort of manage this and keep the bad guys out. And I think that the Fraud Flight Club is a great community to sort of build, and I want to have more people join, and sort of the stronger these type of communities are, the better we're going to be as an industry, and the better you're going to be at your job. So that was what really drew me into this, and yeah, my that's my the reason why I wanted to join.
That's incredible. That's one of the reasons why many people need to tell their stories, and one of the reasons why I'm doing this series and telling the stories around the coaches and the people that have succeeded or have taken the bold decision, or intentionally or not, to be here fighting a few of the fights worth fighting in this world, right? When we look at sort of the unfair advantages and the people mostly at risk here, the story is not one that is small. It's one to change economies, is one that can protect us from the wild nature disasters we're seeing all across the world. So, in a time of all of this, you have any advice for people out there that say, all right, I never thought I could be in this industry. Maybe I thought I needed to be, a finance bro or do something in finance that didn't really feel to me like a worth fighting cause.
Hmm.
The story is a bit different. What
Yeah,
advice would you leave them with?
yeah. I think when you are in fraud prevention, you feel like you're making a difference. If you stop someone from opening an account fraudulently, you stop someone from having an identity theft situation to deal with, some victim to deal with identity theft. And I think that at least at your business, right? And I think that uh, this is a job where you feel like there's a lot of right and wrong, and you feel like you're definitely on the right side, right? There's no question about it. It's black and white. You're on the right side of things, and every time you do your job well and you thwart a fraud ring, or you keep the bad guys out, or you find something where you're able to help law enforcement. There's a lot of times where there's a lot of collaboration with law enforcement, and things like that. You feel like you're helping out. And that is a really cool thing to take away from work, where I wouldn't have got that if I was doing spreadsheets all day, if I was just doing finance all day, and things like that. So I think that it makes you feel a lot better, and you feel like you're making a difference, as opposed to just sort of moving numbers back and forth, because there's real victims, and sometimes the fraud is very nefarious, right? It could be have really bad consequences for people, human trafficking, money laundering, all sorts of stuff that if you do a good job, you're preventing crime from happening. So I think it's a noble profession, to use your terminology. I think it's a great a great profession to be in.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the part that, like, you get to use the coolest tools. Like, how do we get to see more? I think I've seen the rise of the CISO suite from the stock room, sort of in parameter security, to understanding sort of the beyond. But I think today I would like to see fraud professionals take on C suites, board roles, and be beyond the people that say no, right? The people that,
Yeah.
as you said, like, when you look at risk tolerance, it's about who you let in the door and how. And in a world where we talk about personalized services, that's much more to the hand of the consumer than to the dictation of one company. So, as you stick through your values, what are some of the key metrics as a leader that you have looked? Like, one of the main challenges is the number of vendors, the number of technology providers, the pool and challenge between, let my company grow, let as many people through the door as possible,
Yeah.
and keep the company safe. And in spaces like rewards, betting, or finance, we always stumble upon regulation, and regulation being different in every state or sometimes every country. How do you look at metrics of success? And what are some of the sort of maybe tips that you can leave out there for
Yeah.
people that maybe have worked for your organization?
Yeah, so I think that to jump on one thing you said is, fraud is often seen as the department of no, right? Fraud and compliance is often the department of no, where it's like someone in marketing.
Let's just
Yeah,
say this out loud. Mistake, guys. We're not the Department of No.
that's right. I like to be the department of,
Well, like,
yeah,
but ooh, we're the department of, like, are you sure? Like,
I want to
maybe.
be the department of not no, but the department of yes, but. Right? Yes, we can do that, but we have to do, other things to make sure we're safer. Yes, but we have to make sure we're monitoring. Yes, but we have to have caps. Yes, but we do something like that. So instead of being in the department of no, I always try and say, like, yes, we can do your idea, but we have to do X, Y, and Z in order to make the business safe and the company safe. So that's one thing I'll say about you know, the the bad rap maybe that fraud professionals get, which is, being maybe too averse.
Heroes, like, you can be like a superhero and have like a bad character and these things. I appreciate that that's been the history, but like, let's win our way telling people, like, hey, as you said, the but, or
Yeah.
maybe it can be just like, how do we, or have you thought about? Like, I love the understanding of, if we look at the world of zero trust architecture, or even some of these words, or how we like put it out there. Like, how do we invite the conversation to be about the boundaries, the values, the promises that we kept for the clients that keep the lights on and believe in what you do every day? I think when you turn the conversation into that, the hero comes out.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you look for in your team? You've been growing your team. Bilt Rewards has been growing like mad.
Yeah.
So, how do you look at, like, you've talked about even obviously technological terms or engineering team terms like
Hmm.
waterfalling and working in certain ways. What are some KPIs, or what are some things that you think about when you look at, and you said something that was really important that I want to bring back. The fraud profession doesn't have, you know, this perfect degree that you could
Yeah.
just inject here. A lot of it is learned from job and experiences, or a collection
Yeah.
and a curiosity. So, what do you look for when you look in success and
Yeah.
KPIs, or what do you look for when you look at your team?
Yeah. So on the KPI front, um, so when I was doing credit cards and we were doing direct lending, a lot of what we were looking at is fraud losses. And those are things like third party fraud, but as sort of the years went by, the fraud has really shifted the type of fraud that you're seeing, and it's not as black and white. So I think previously in previous years, uh, there was a lot of third party fraud, there's a lot of synthetic fraud. And as we got a lot better, yeah,
Can I pause you there?
yeah,
Third party fraud, explain.
yeah,
Synthetic fraud, explain.
sure. Yeah, so third party fraud, like this is true identity theft. Someone stole someone's identity and they're using it to impersonate someone else. Synthetic fraud being my definition of synthetic fraud is when someone's using either parts of a real identity mismatched with other parts. So typically it's the SSN that's being changed in order to take out credit not associated with their real credit report. Um, and so, probably in 2018 is when I really started noticing a lot of synthetic identity fraud, or at least maybe I started recognizing it. Not sure. I'm sure it existed before then in our books, but in about 2018, I started noticing that we had a big synthetic identity problem. And as the years went by, I think this was industry wide. There wasn't a great solution, and we had used a few of them. And eventually, we um, had a great vendor that helped us sort of solve that problem. And then eventually, the ECBSV, which is the electronic consent based SSN verification, which is where you can sort of do a live call to the Social Security Administration to validate Social Security numbers. When those sort of became ubiquitous across the industry, synthetic identity fraud is maybe not zero, but near zero. And if you're using these tools, and after that, the fraud didn't go away; it just shifted, right? And so instead of being a lot of synthetic fraud, a lot of third party fraud, we started seeing a lot more first party fraud. And that was sort of the problem starting, we'll call it COVID, but it was before that, but it started really getting bad during COVID. And we started seeing a lot of bust out style fraud, fraud rings out of different areas of the country, and people manipulating and washing their credit. And so we started seeing a lot more of that in the lending space and the credit card space. And so one of the things that I think I really tried to do as good of a job as possible was accurately tagging the type of loss. And being really aggressive and tagging things as first party fraud when it looked like we were able to pin it down. And so a lot of the first party fraud you can't tell when you're booking, but you can tell when the transactions come through and how they're trying to dispute the trade lines and things like that. So spending a lot of time accurately tagging the type of fraud loss it is. Instead of one bucket of fraud, it's third party, first party, and then subcategories around bust out, credit washing, etc. And so when I really started doing that, it helps with attributing what our major risk problems are, helping with model development for fraud models and things like that. So it's not really on the KPI front, but it helps with sort of the
Totally should be, by the way.
yeah the tagging of fraud. I mean,
You're kind of changing the funnel and how the funnel is even talked about. And that's a part of this telling the story of like, we're not just here just to say no, right?
right,
Like if your fraud models and your credit models get better and your approval rates get better and your lack of, I don't need these many more screens because I'm picking up all these signals ahead of time and I'm now mapped where the fraud really happens. You can arm yourself with, you can stop swimming in software that you maybe utilize 2% of. And as you said, find the right vendors and the right
yeah,
partners. So that's really cool as well, because I think a lot of your speech and story tells the story of partnering, the story of like exploring different models, different ways, and trying to identify internally the data. You call it tagging, but that's the premises for when we look at neural networks or when we look at the
yeah,
buzzword AI bingo that a lot of CEOs or boards or investors are asking either our fintech CEOs or reward CEOs and saying, hey, how does your company do? This is a story I think the fraud teams can start to tell. A lot of what we've been doing is before it was like cool and sexy.
yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. That the tagging stuff is something I've been pretty hardcore, and I think that the industry should adopt standardized tags across all different lenders should have the same definitions, and so we're able to more accurately talk to each other about what's happening. Because what I call a first party fraud, someone calls just a first payment delinquency or a credit loss.
That's why I asked you, which is why I like so rudely sort of stopped you and said, please explain your definition, because I think a huge part of us talking is finding a vernacular,
Yeah,
right? A set of metrics, of vernacular, a space for collaboration where interoperability begins with us identifying. I know that that's one of the hardest things when you're trying to keep the bad guys out, because the minute you outline, identify, they also get a hold of it.
yeah,
If only we can convince them to find their smarts to do something else.
yeah. Some of these fraudsters, they could be doing they could be curing cancer with how how advanced they are and how much they iterate.
You're listening to all of us, right?
Yeah, exactly. I like to say that I have a very symbiotic relationship with the fraudsters because without them, I wouldn't have a job. So it's like if I was doing too good of a job and we stopped all the fraud, what am I even here for? So, we got to make sure, they keep iterating, which causes me to keep iterating and the industry to keep moving forward. So it's like a game of cat and mouse, but I like to think it's symbiotic.
All right. Well, that is one way of looking at driving a
Yeah.
document or friends.
Yeah.
And you look at the light from within, which is really incredible, Ryan. Like, is there any parting things that is there anywhere if people are looking to collaborate or wanting to know more about Bilt Rewards, like tell us.
Yeah, sure. Bill Rewards has a few different business verticals, we'll say. We have our co-brand credit card with Wells Fargo that will get you 1% back on rent. So if you pay your rent, you can get 1% on rent. Bianca, if you pay rent, if you live in the US, you pay rent, you can get the card and you can get 1% back on rent. So that's our value prop. You have to make 5 transactions per month and you get 1% back on rent. So that's the co-branded credit card. Build also has a in-network we operate a payment center for large property managers, and so that's another thing. You can pay rent through Built if you live in one of these buildings and still get points. And then the other thing is you can connect different credit cards not related to the Built MasterCard and get points on neighborhood dining and different sort and pharmacy and exercise classes and things like that. So we're a rewards company primarily that also has a credit card and as well as sort of this payment business. So what I would say is check out built.com and you can see you can create an account, and you don't have to get the credit card to start. You could just check out the different benefits and rewards that we have. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me if anyone wants to collaborate or sees anything interesting fraud wise. I love meeting new fraud professionals that I haven't met before, and sort of exploring. I love a good fraud ring story. So if people have really advanced fraud ring stories, come to me. I'd love to talk about it.
Okay, so on our next episode, which I will leave the roughly 2 million wonderful human beings that check out our content on LinkedIn weekly
Hmm.
to tell us which kind of fraud story they want you to tell. And then I can bring you and really one cool special guest, and we should do that.
Sure. I love fraud stories.
I will put you in the hosting seat because I think.
Okay. I'll hold you to that. That's going to be fun. Sounds good.
Well, and for those people out there that have not been to one of our Fraud Fight Club events, maybe they can join us or they're wondering about joining us in Charlotte this year. Ryan, what can they expect other than the fact that they'll meet us and have a chance to tell their stories?
Yeah, I think Fraud Fight Club is going to be really fun. I think we're going to have some great collaborations, some great content, some breakout sessions where we actually go deep as opposed to just repeating the same story over and over. I'd love to have as many people there as possible where we're able to share openly, and I think this is going to be sort of a fraud event by fraud professionals as opposed to a fraud event by fraud vendors. So I think this will be a fun event. So I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. I love the neutrality. That is one of my main purposes and why I'm participating and excited to host this year and get a chance to like meet more coaches like you and people in the community. So if you haven't booked your ticket yet, make sure to. Ryan, I want to take a minute and as a person say thanks
Yeah.
for sharing your story, for being so boldly out here, hiding in your booth, and
Yeah.
you're in a really busy time. And it's just really cool to see you already giving back after an eventful career and still in a growing role with so much to like combat and learn and share about. I'm excited to see you in Charlotte.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna be fun. See you soon, right? Well, it's coming up fast.
Yes, it is.
It's only 3 months away. It's less than 3 months away. It's crazy.
I know. I know. Don't tell me about it. I have so much to do between then and that.
I bet. I bet you have a ton to think about with that. That's
Yeah,
so
we
you're
learned a lot with all the coaches. Like they each have their own stories, and like
yeah.
it's really cool. And
So
it's
are you
really
doing like opening and closing sessions?
yes, yes.
Got it.
I'll be there to open and close the event, and then to meet some of you and interview some of you will be good.
Yeah, should be fun. It'll be good. It'll be fun.
Well, I'm. I just want to say thanks. Thanks for
Yeah,
spending the time. What we'll do is we're going through all of them. There's I think 11 or 13 of them that have already been done. So they'll go out first. You'll get a chance to like get a transcript, that suggestions of how we're gonna post. Make sure, Ryan, that I just have like your favorite picture, a vector file of like your company or anything else that you want me to share or tag. Like if your company has like a special hashtag that you want to use that will make your CMO happy, just like just share that stuff with my team
sure.
so we can use it. There's about 5,000 people in a newsletter weekly, 2 million people weekly on view on posts. That's on mine. And then there's also the people that I think there's about like 30 or 40,000 on like about fraud. So that's where it will go.
Sure.
Just to share, and then it'll go in the clips. So we'll give you a chance to look at them, and if there's any that you're like not comfortable with or you don't like, you just tell us.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it sounds great. I'll get the vector file and any
Yeah,
sort of
some of the
collateral
basic
for you guys.
things. Yeah, because if there's a brand guideline, like we've worked with, like we have coaches in Visa, we have coaches in like the Reserve Bank of Boston, so we will work with whatever like the guidelines are.
Yeah,
Just let
for sure.
our teams know.
Cool. Yeah, I'll try and get that to you this week. And thanks for this. This was fun. This was a good time.
Cool. I hope this wasn't painful.
No, it's fine. All good. I'm glad we were able to lock it down. I know I moved it, then you had we hard to land on the right day, but I appreciate your flexibility.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I'm so glad we were able to do it. I just wanted to make sure that we do as many coaches as I can before the event. And I think that that's a much cooler human way of saying why they should come.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
we all have really amazing jobs, and it's not a story, as you said. I think you put it so eloquently. Like, it's not about vendors. It's not about
Yeah.
here, buy this thing. It's about here's the
Most of
problem.
these events I go to are vendor events. You know what I mean? They're still good, but it's like
They have their purpose is like going to the mall versus going to like an art museum.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm a museum piece, right? I'm a museum piece. Yeah.
Or a concert or an
Yeah.
experience.
No, it's true.
About the community and the people and still learning something.
Yeah,
Sharing.
for sure.
You said it yourself. Collaboration.
Yeah.
Anyways,
This will be
Ryan,
fun.
one promise I will keep is to keep you on time. So
Cool. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
take care. Bye.